Kelli Marshall. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Man, I appreciate you showing up for me. So what my show title is, it's called Chicago Film Experience. And you are part of the Chicago Film Experience. So I just wanted to know a little bit of background about yourself.
All right. So currently I run a small business called Chicago Movie Tours. Before doing that, I worked as a professor of film and media studies for about 12 or 13 years. Got a little bit away from higher education, but started to miss the classroom experience. So I wanted to figure out how I could still teach film, but do so perhaps away from higher education. And so I figured out that I could do that by creating a tour company where I'm basically teaching film, but it's in a real world experience as opposed to a traditional classroom.
Okay. So you still kind of get that fix of teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I run a tour, it's teaching people something about film that potentially they did not know before they took the tour.
Okay. So I know that you're not from Chicago, right?
That is correct.
So where are you from originally?
Originally Louisiana, and that's where
I can hear that southern drawl there.
That's where the twang is. It's still there. I've been here for 13 years, in the Midwest for about 15 years, but the accent is still with us.
Oh wow! you know what? My father's from Mississippi. He's from the South, so.
There you go. I'm sure it's there as well.
At some point, we're all from the South.
Yes.
So and that's one of the things that's unique because a lot of people, I think there's a lot of people who come to Chicago and they do see the beauty. What attracted you to the film landscape of Chicago?
Well, Chicago's film history, as you know, is about 135 years old. I mean, if you want to go back to 1893 and talking about some of the moving picture history of the World's Fair of Chicago, I mean, Chicago's history goes back Chicago's film history, I should say, goes back that far. So it's really a great town to work on film tours and to work on just the study of Chicago's film history. So that's certainly one aspect that attracted me. But of course, the city looks great on film. And there are so many films, of course, that showcase Chicago. So, I mean, there's certainly a lot to pick from as far as working on tours, whether they be in person or virtual or whatnot.
So, speaking of different types of films, so one of the things that I thought of, and I said, I wanted to get a woman's perspective because I said, when I started doing the Chicago film history, I'm like, men don't really watch rom-coms. And then I started seeing a lot of Chicago rom-coms, and I was like, oh, we have. So now what is your take? We talked about this earlier, but you have different categorizations for some of the what we perceive as rom-coms.
Right, yeah. So during the pandemic, I taught an online course called the Rom-Com in Chicago. And we covered High Fidelity, the movie High Fidelity. We covered What Women Want. We covered a little bit of When Harry Met Sally, which is only just a small portion that's filmed here in Chicago, but it definitely has that beginning, the opening of the film, which is Chicago for sure. And there's Return to Me. There's Groundhog Day, of course. I mean, there are several romantic comedies. And the one that I think most people think about whenever they think of Chicago and the romantic comedy is My Best Friend's Wedding, which we were discussing earlier. And that's one that I would actually categorize as more of a screwball comedy than a romantic comedy. So it just kind of depends on where your delineations lie as far as, how you categorize these things.
You might make people mad with the screwball comedy, I'm saying, but
the screwball comedy is, for me personally, more entertaining in ways than the romantic comedy from a woman's perspective, because that's what you asked for. Because in a screwball comedy, the woman dominates the courtship. The entire narrative really is run by the female protagonist. And that's not the case with When Harry Met Sally, and that's not the case with When What Women Want, or What Women Want. So that's a little bit of an interesting turn that I think the romantic comedy does not always give us.
Right, and like I said, I call those the bromantic comedies. So, because I mean, like the Vince Vaughn comedies, the Breakup and the Dilemma, those comedies, it's like he's still being macho. He's still trying to be a man.
Right.
You could even argue that, like you say, What Women Want, but also a film like Love Jones kind of does it too. They're more like, that was one of the things I started noticing as I thought about it, was it's a lot of male-dominated rom-coms.
Yeah. Yeah, there are. And that's one other aspect of the two that I think are different, is the romantic comedy driven by the male, as you're suggesting. But it's also a relatively slow-paced narrative. The screwball comedy, on the other hand, is very quick-paced and moves pretty fast through the relationship. But in a romantic comedy, the man has to have time to learn how to behave properly in front of women, or behave properly in a relationship, like Groundhog Day.
Right.
It takes him over and over and over and over before he figures out, this is how I need to behave with Andy McDowell's character before I can actually get her in the end. So it's that slow process of the romantic comedy, but a very fast process in the screwball comedy. So that's another way I think that the two kind of differ, and why I like to, categorize them separately.
What do you think it is about Chicago that has allowed the rom-coms to be set here? A lot of the rom-coms are just set here.
Well, going back to what we were talking about a moment ago, is that the city is just captured really beautifully on film. And I know I was mentioning My Best Friend's Wedding as a screwball comedy, and I still think it is, but that is a film that does capture Chicago really well. Because they go and they take the architecture boat cruise, and you get to see the city from that vantage point where, people from all over the world come here to see from that vantage point. So, there's that, which showcases the city beautifully. Something like While You Were Sleeping, which I do classify as a romantic comedy, that uses the city as really a heavy part of the narrative, actually, because Sandra Bullock's character is a token collector at the CTA, right? So, it's using some of the grittier parts of Chicago to form her character and the relationship that she's trying to forge with these men eventually. So, yeah, I mean, the city can support all sorts of narratives, I think, too. So that's probably a good reason that folks want to film here.
So with While You Were Sleeping and My Best Friend's Wedding.
Yeah.
Now, these are both, Sandra Bullock, Julia Roberts. The characters are somewhat similar, but what are some of the differences, though?
With Julia Roberts in My Best Friend's Wedding, I have seen her referred to very frequently in commentary on that film as the villain. And that was a pretty unique role for Julia Roberts at that particular point in her career. So it kind of moved her away from Pretty Woman, from Runaway Bride, and some of those other roles that she was America's sweetheart.
Right.
So she is much more manipulative in that film, which is, again, why I classify it more as screwball than romantic, because she doesn't get the guy at the end at all. Cameron Diaz is the one who gets her guy, right? Gets Julia Roberts' guy. And then, of course, with While You Were Sleeping, Sandra Bullock's character is very quiet and sort of reserved. She's lonely. She wants a family. Yeah. So she longs for love, right? So there's a very different vibe between those two characters. One very much wanting the promise of love, and one very much wanting to break up the promise of love, right? Yeah.
that was, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, because I watched both of them, and I was like, you feel for Sandra Bullock's character.
Right.
That's where Julia Roberts, you're like,
it's like, what is this woman doing?
So now, what would you consider your top 5? It doesn't have to be the top 5, but your top 5 rom-coms.
It doesn't have to be filmed in Chicago? Or
it's all Chicago.
Okay.
It's all the shots. So, yeah.
All right. Top 5 romantic comedies filmed in Chicago. Now, again, When Harry Met Sally. It's a brief moment. It's only like, 10 minutes, maybe 10 or 12 minutes. I would probably list that as number 1, just because it is a very classic example of a romantic comedy, at least from the way that I'm defining romantic comedy.
Okay.
I think there are good elements and fun elements in What Women Want, although that is extremely problematic look at women and men, as well as the Mel Gibson situation.
Yeah.
That has come more to light. There are still some interesting things that you can use in that film to teach people, students, whatever, about the romantic comedy. So I don't know where I'd classify that in my list. Groundhog Day, maybe number 2.
Okay.
And so just a very well-crafted film. It's a unique look at the romantic comedy. The fact that it's repetitive, the same exact day, but it's just tweaked enough in every
Right.
day that you get a difference.
Yeah.
But the goal, of course, is the same in the end.
Yeah.
What else? While You Were Sleeping, yeah, it's definitely a great romantic comedy. I think of it as a Christmas movie as well. So once you start talking about Home Alone and Elf, and
That's true.
yeah, you can label it in that category too. So that's 4. What is another one? It's been a long time since I've watched Return to Me. So, but I don't remember anything that really sticks out to me as far as that I'd want to revisit it. You know, like While You Were Sleeping.
See, I always on my list is probably Love Jones. I think that's for a lot of us that's a classic because they kind of, and plus Lorenz Tate is from Chicago.
Yeah.
So, you know,
that one shows Chicago in a great light as well.
It does, especially from a different perspective of him doing poetry and being in this poetry like nightclub setting. I mean, I think. See, I would not have categorized Groundhog Day, but that would now. I mean, now that you say it, it makes me think like, okay, I could put that on my list. And then like Stranger Than Fiction, even though it's under the guise of kind of almost like this dark comedy, but it's still a rom-com underneath.
Yeah, and that's the same thing like with The Breakup, right? I mean, it's got romantic comedy elements, but it's almost the anti-romantic comedy because they're not trying to get together in the end. They're trying to break up, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Stranger Than Fiction and Love Jones, those that kind of run the border of comedy, drama, fantasy, in the case of maybe with Stranger Than Fiction. Yeah, it's hard to classify some of these that have been filmed in Chicago for sure.
I think the one thing though is that they picked Chicago for a reason.
Yeah.
So that's the good thing. They picked Chicago for a reason. I mean, I in The Breakup too, just to add to that, like he's a tour guide as well. So
on the boats, right?
Yep.
I think that. Yeah.
Yep. On the boats, and then spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, I'm not gonna say it, but boats, yes.
Yeah, he is, and isn't he from here?
Yep, Vince Vaughn is from here as well.
There are several movies of his that are set in Chicago. Is he Bad Santa? Or what's Fred Claus?
Yeah, I think it's Fred Claus.
And that's set here, I believe, as well. And then the one that you mentioned earlier, Dilemma. Dilemma, that's set here.
Yeah, and that was another bromantic comedy.
Yeah.
So the bromantic comedies, I call them. Because I mean, you can say they're romantic comedies, but away from the traditional what we think of. Like, I start seeing all these guys and all the testosterone, and I don't want to. Okay, I'll marry you. Like it's that kind of stuff.
It takes that entire 2 hours or however long it is to get them to that point. Where again, in the screwball comedy, not so much. It's the woman who's running the show, which is, a little more fun depending on the point of view of who's watching it.
So, what is your favorite Chicago-made movie?
Favorite Chicago-made movie? That's a tough question to answer. I think this is an interesting answer because, number one, I don't really like gangster films. I don't gravitate toward mafia or gangster or any of those crime movies, but I love The Untouchables.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm going to answer it that way because I think that The Untouchables really showcases Chicago, the architecture, just the vibe of the city, even though it's set in the 1930s, right? Right. It captures it so well and beautifully for that time period, but also the time period in which it was filming. So, I mean, it's a great movie.
I know they exaggerated some things in Untouchables, but yeah, I
don't know the backstory. I mean, I know a bit about Al Capone and all that, but I don't really care about the the truth as far
No,
as
you don't
what
need, you don't
the
need
story
to.
they're telling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a movie, and that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we get is the enjoyment of watching the films, and also with like our city as a backdrop. And so I think,
What about you? What
from
is your favorite?
oh man, it's tough. My favorite, it's always, and I just was talking to my wife about this. It's a toss up,
Okay.
and it's a lot of people. It's on their list. Blues between the Blues Brothers and Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
And I think I usually say Ferris Bueller's Day Off somewhat because of here's a kid who just became a tourist in his own city.
Yes.
He just ditched school and I'm just going to be a tourist in my own city, and that's it. And so I think he showcased the city in a lot of good ways. I also think the Blues Brothers did as well.
Yeah.
They did go to some other locations that are not often visited. Like you get the South Shore Country Club that they filmed at, and there's a church on 93rd Street, and they were, all on Maxwell Street. So they showcase the city as well. So I always say those two films just because it's kind of, I think both of them are more like a love letter to Chicago.
Yeah, and that's the way that John Hughes has frequently described Ferris Bueller's Day Off. In any interview that he does that's asked about that movie, he always calls that his love letter to Chicago. And that's very evident. And as much of the city as he's trying to cram into an hour and 50 minutes. And the Blues Brothers, same way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a whole lot of this city that is placed in there. And that movie, I mean, I could have answered it in that, with that movie as well, because without the Blues Brothers, we don't have Ferris Bueller's Day Off. We don't have Love Jones. We don't have My Best Friend's Wedding, because it was the Blues Brothers that ushered in the film experience in Chicago.
Yeah. I think I always like to give a shout out to Cooley High just because they they held it down for so long. They're an interesting study, mainly because of the fact that, Richard J. Daley didn't really like filming in the city. And
it had to showcase Chicago in a positive light.
Exactly.
Right. Or it was also, what does he say in an interview? Only movies that I could take my kids to see are going to be allowed to be shot in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then Jane Byrne, of course, turns that around whenever Belushi and Aykroyd go to her office and they say, "Can we crash a car into the Daley building?" And like, sure. So, yeah, that's why I say the Blues Brothers, super important. But, yeah, Cooley High, I mean, that is some definite Chicago history filming as well.
Some other questions. So before you moved to Chicago, were you always into Chicago films?
No.
Really?
No, I had, of course, seen most of the John Hughes movies because I grew up with The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off and 16 Candles and all of that. So I definitely knew that aspect of Chicago film history and the north suburbs and the city and all that. But no, my area of focus in my PhD program was Shakespeare and film.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty far removed from Chicago and film. And then after that, it was Gene Kelly and film.
Oh, so
if you know
dance.
yes,
Oh,
right.
okay.
So Singing in the Rain and all of those Gene Kelly movies. So yeah, Shakespeare to Gene Kelly to Chicago and film. Kind of a strange.
May have had a few musicals here or there. I don't know. I have to look into it. I'm not a big musical person, but I did see Wicked. So
Well, the movie Chicago, the movie musical Chicago, not filmed.
it wasn't filmed here, right?
Toronto, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
and that was going to be another list of that I had. I was going to tell people 5 films that are not made in Chicago that they think are made in Chicago.
Yeah.
So, and Chicago isn't one of them.
That's right. I know. That is just bizarre.
It is. It's.
I mean.
I mean, they got to remove the name. It's like if the Bears moved to Arlington Heights, they got to call it like Arlington Heights or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not the real Chicago.
Right.
I think I got one other question for you. So this one is in regards to your tours. Now, what would you tell tourists or young Chicagoans who aren't familiar with Chicago's rich film history?
Well, I mean, that is the basis, I think, of the 6 tours that I currently run now, which is my mission is always to help people discover Chicago through film. And I also have, like on my website, that if you take one of these tours, you are guaranteed to learn something new about Chicago in film. Guaranteed, right? You are guaranteed to. Because I like to dig into those parts of film history that are relatively unknown that you cannot get from a website
Right.
that talks about Chicago movie locations. I mean, so with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, for example, you know, you can find out where that fancy restaurant where he pretends to be Abe Froman is. You can go there and you can visit it. You can go look at the, you know, Wrigley Field or whatever. But I am more interested in why are these 3 kids leaving the suburbs of Chicago, moving into the city, and making it their playground? And why, for example, are they spending, let's say, based on the film, 3 or 4 hours in the Art Institute? What is it about that? I mean, why choose that? So we'd answer that question by actually going into certain galleries at the Art Institute and talking about why these kids are actually spending so much time. And if you go back into Ferris Bueller's room, like in the opening credits of the film, you will find pieces of art in that room, which tells you that Ferris Bueller obviously has an interest in fine art, and so maybe that's why they are that's why he's taking his friends. So I mean, there's those little nuggets that that I am interested in sharing with, whether it be people who have lived here their entire lives or people who are coming in from, you know, for a weekend.
I can tell you, as a kid growing up, I grew up on the west side of Chicago, but I was always artistic, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off was the film that I looked at because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to like not go to school one day and just tour the city, and you know, and so fortunately I grew up and I was able to do that.
Have you seen Southside? The Ferris Bueller's the TV show Southside?
Yeah, oh yeah,
But the Ferris Bueller episode.
Which one? I'm trying to remember.
So they do the same thing. The characters in Southside do the same thing, and they have this like day off, and they go to the DeSable Museum of African American History, and they look at the paintings, and they go to different buildings and locations.
Yeah, you know what?
I
I do remember that episode because I had actually, I know a bunch of people who were on the South Side. I love that show. I'm mad they got rid of it because I feel like that was a creative way of showcasing the South Side without showing the violence or all the stuff that you hear about on the news.
Super funny.
Yeah,
Super funny.
It was hilarious.
Didn't it get moved to like different?
It was
networks?
on the Max. It was on Max. And
Did
so
it move to Comedy Central? Or
it was on Comedy Central, and then it was went to streaming.
Oh,
and so when it went to Max, they didn't renew it, which they should renew it. But
yes, they should renew it because there is some funny stuff in there. And that part, especially if you're a Ferris Bueller fan, which clearly you are, yeah, that is a really fun episode that nods to, you know, that classic Chicago movie.
I got one last question here, and that question is there anything else you would want people to know about Chicago film tours or film history?
Anything else?
What's like the most important thing, I guess you would say?
About my tour specifically?
Your tours and just Chicago in general and this rich history.
Yeah, I mean, I think that most people don't understand that Chicago was Hollywood before Hollywood. I mean, obviously New Jersey with Thomas Edison and what he was doing with moving pictures in the very beginnings, that certainly has some heft in history as well. But I think most people don't realize that before World War I, it was Chicago is where you would come and you would make movies. So I do like to insert that in as many tours as possible to let people know just how long the film history runs here, which is why I think I started off by saying that 135 years or something to that effect, if you want to go back to even the World's Fair.
Okay, cool. Kelli Marshall, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
And that is it, the Chicago Film Experience.